It's a beautiful day here. Sunny, bright, warm. It feels like summer is on its way, but it's not quite here yet. It's just a really, really good day. I'm heading up to the grocery store, the natural type grocery store, which is like an hour away from where I live. So I figured I've got time to do what I've been avoiding, and that's telling the story of how I met my husband. And I'm not going to do that yet. I'll put it off just a few more minutes. Talk about my health update. So in the last week or so, I've had a couple of really bad days. But I think I figured out why, I think. Even though the why doesn't make sense to me. But just to let you know, a week or so ago, after I ate dinner, I started getting some really serious pain in my abdomen area, kind of to the right side, underneath the ribs, which is of course where the liver is, which is where my cancer is currently, and all the way around my back down to my lower right side of my back. And it was really painful, just really like there were rocks inside of me or something. And it went on for like 2 days. I had a hard time sleeping because I can't lay on my side because it hurt so bad, and it was just a really, really hard time. And it went on for 2 days, and I was just really, really concerned, considering, calling the doctor and getting checked out. And but after a couple of days, it kind of went away. So I was like, well, okay. I don't know what that was, but it's gone now, so I'm not going to worry about it. So then a week or so later, it happened again, but it was very specific when it happened again, and I could kind of take note of what was going on. And so what happened was, in the evening, I have to have a snack in the evening to take my last round of supplements. And I had a couple pieces of toast. And I can't eat just any bread. I have to be very specific with the kind of bread I can eat. And this particular bread is made, with just fruit juice instead of sugar, like a lot of bread is, most bread is. And it had very low content of sugar. And so, that's kind of what I can eat. And it's like whole wheat and whatever. And so it was after I ate that I started having this pain again. And it was once again excruciating. And so I started thinking back to the first time it happened. I wondered, had I eaten the bread that night? And I feel like I probably did. And I feel like I probably ate it the next day too. So I feel like the bread is what triggered this awful, horrible pain. It doesn't make sense to me that bread of any kind could trigger this horrible pain in my abdomen. And it wasn't like guts, it wasn't like intestines, it wasn't like diarrhea or anything like that. It was just a really horrible pain, like there were rocks in my side grinding up against my organs. So it was really strange. But that only lasted a day because I was like, okay, well, maybe it's that bread, and I didn't eat any more of it, and I got better the next day, and I've been better ever since. And I ain't eaten any more of that bread. I don't know if that's what did it. Part of me wants to do it again just to see, but I don't want to go through that pain again. It was pretty awful. I mean, to the point where I was considering going to the hospital or ER or whatever. So I don't understand. If any of you guys have any kind of clue whatsoever of how something as simple as bread could trigger so much pain, help me out, because I don't understand it. But I ain't eating that bread anymore. I'm heading up to the store now where I'm going to get my bread that I normally eat, which hasn't caused me the pain. Hello, who's ever here today? I hope you're doing well. And I hope you're having a nice, bright, sunny day like I am. It's beautiful here. I'm so happy. The trees are starting to get their leaves. Summer is my favorite season. I love summer, though I don't like it. It's a lot itchier here in Missouri than it was in Colorado. I forgot about the itch. You're always itchy in the summertime here with the bugs and everything else. Anyway, that was my health update. If you missed it, I guess you'll have to go back and watch it later. Yeah. So, but I'm doing better now. Feeling good. Feeling back to normal, and emotionally feeling better. Because anytime I have an issue where I'm feeling, I'm not feeling so good, in your head you start thinking, what's happening, and is this the beginning of the end? That's just where your mind goes when you have cancer. And if you're feeling good and all of a sudden and very rapidly you're not feeling good, that's where your mind goes. Maybe this is the beginning of the end. And I kind of hate it, but it's my life. It's how things are. So now to get on to the story that I've been delaying for a long time, because I just don't want to talk about it, but it's part of my story, so I need to talk about it, just get it out of the way. And I'm going to try to be... It's really hard to talk about my ex-husband in a positive way. Because, we were together for 25 years, so obviously it wasn't all bad, or else, maybe I wouldn't have stayed as long as I did. But the bad was bad enough to where it overshadows any good there ever was. Anyway, so we'll just start the story. So I left Colorado to get away from the memory of my first love, and ended up moving to a place called Goshen, Mississippi. And I moved there with somebody that I had known in Colorado, who moved to Mississippi with her family like the year before, or a number of months before, or something like that. And I went down there to live with her. She was in like a 3-bedroom apartment with another friend of hers, and it was going to be me, her, and this other friend all living together. And I went down there, and it's 1996. I am a goth girl at that time. Black hair, black eyeliner, white makeup, not white, but pale makeup, and just all gothed out. And I'm moving to Mississippi. In 1996 Mississippi, and maybe it's still that way, you're not going to be well received by a lot of the people if you go to Mississippi in 1996 looking like a goth girl, especially small town goth girl, small town Mississippi. Maybe if one of the bigger cities or something, but if it's a small town, you're not going to fit in so well. So I ended up in Goshen, Mississippi. I didn't have hardly any money. I'd saved about $500 for the trip. I had to buy a bus ticket, help pay for gas for the guy that drove me halfway across this country, and buy my food. And I got there, and I only had so much money left. And of course, being in my 20 years old, young and stupid, the first thing I did is I went out and I got a kitten, because I had a cat die shortly before I left, and I was heartbroken over the death of my cat, so I got a kitten, which was stupid, but I did. And so I was out of money, and I'm in Goshen, Mississippi. There's no public transportation. I don't have a car. We did live across the street from a mall and another strip mall, and so I was limited to get a job by whatever I could walk to. And I walked to as many places. Never could get a call back, never could get... Of course, I looked like a freak in Mississippi. Of course no one was going to hire me, but at 20 years old, I think, well, they should look past that. But people don't. And so I couldn't get a job, so I was kind of freaking out. I was like, what am I going to do? I've been here at the time. I was like, I've been here a couple of weeks. I don't have any money. I can't contribute towards rent or even groceries. So I had another friend that somehow, I don't know how, 1996, no Google, no internet, no nothing. And I somehow got in touch with a friend of mine that I knew in a place called Fort Walton Beach, Florida, which is just a few hours from Goshen, Mississippi. Got in touch with her, started talking to her, and she invited me to come live with her. And she had, sent me a letter in the mail that said, hey, I've got a job lined up for you. I've got a place for you to live. You can stay with us and come stay with us. And she was married to some guy she met she was writing to in prison in high school. He got out of prison and she married him. That relationship didn't last. Go figure. But, so I was like, okay, well, she's got a job lined up for me. And so I ended up moving to Fort Walton Beach, Florida. Upset my friend in Mississippi who thought I was bailing on her, which I wasn't. I was just chasing after a job. And come to find out, her and her husband were roommating with the person who ended up becoming my husband. And it was actually his place, not theirs. And they didn't tell him I was coming until I was already there. But what she didn't tell me was where they lived was a small little 2-bedroom, single-wide trailer in a trailer park. Had she told me that, I may have reconsidered going, simply because, I've never in my life lived in a trailer. Not that I have anything against people who do, but at the time, I wasn't really excited about the idea of living in a trailer. And it was a 2-bedroom trailer, and they were in one room, he was in the other, so where was I going to sleep? I slept on this really crappy 1960s couch. I can't remember if it turned into a sofa bed or not. I can't remember. But anyway, so I ended up living with them. She got me a job at the gas station where she works. So at least I had a job, at least I had a place to live. But, and then, so my first impression of my ex-husband was the evening after I got there. He comes running in after he gets off of work, and he's all excited. And he's running to Stanley, who is my friend's husband, and he's excited because he managed to score some drugs. And when this happened, when I heard this, I was like, oh, really? Not only am I here living in a trailer, but I'm also living in a place where people are actively doing drugs all the time. Now, I was 20 years old and I was not against doing drugs. I will just honestly say, but I didn't want to live in a house where it was kept. I'd always, back in, when I was doing my little, young person experimenting with substances, I never lived in a place where it was kept. And I never wanted to. And, so now I've got, anyway, so it was just kind of a situation I wasn't real happy to be in. And I didn't like him when I first met him. My first impression of him was, ew, I don't like him at all. But obviously that changed. And I think the reason why it changed was just mostly because I was still heartbroken from the breakup of my first love. And I just wanted to be with somebody, and he was there and available. And so after about a week, really I had to make all the moves. I had to be the one to initiate the relationship at all, which, I would tell any woman, if you have to be the one to make all the moves and they're not putting any effort into, starting up the relationship or even managing the relationship, I would say don't do it, because from my experience, that's a lazy person. It's a lazy guy, a guy with no confidence. I guess there's some guys out there that are just so shy that they couldn't, but this guy wasn't shy. He was just lazy. And I don't even know that he was all that into me. So he may not have been all that into me. But I guess he decided I was available and he was available, and he may as well. But once again, I had to make all the moves. I had to initiate everything. And that's something I will never do again. If a guy is not willing to chase after me to some degree, then I don't want nothing to do with him. So that's how I met my husband. It wasn't very much longer after that my friend and her husband moved out. And there's so many stories about that first year between me and him that I'm like, if I would have been an older person with a little bit of life experience, I would have just told him to hit the road. Because, I may have told these stories on my channel already and I don't remember, but I'll just say, one of the stories is we were sitting there in the kitchen, or we were in the kitchen, we were like making dinner or something, and we were being kind of lovey-dovey, and I, with stars in my eyes, I asked him, I was like, say something nice about me. And he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. He couldn't say anything nice about me. And he got mad because I asked him to say something nice about me. He said, you're putting me on the spot. And I'm like, well, I'm your girlfriend. You can't say anything nice about me? And he got mad. We got into a fight over it. Yeah. If your boyfriend can't say anything nice about you, you probably shouldn't be with him. So that was one thing. And then another thing, less than a month into our relationship, we were at a nightclub, and I was talking to this other guy, but okay, back then we hung out in a lot of gay bars. It was just like the thing to do if you're kind of freaky, if you're kind of not a normal person, if like me, and the goth girl, and you hung out at the gay bars. I don't know why. This is what we did. We weren't gay. But I was talking to this guy in this gay bar, thinking he's gay, thinking it's safe to talk to him because he's gay, right? And he's not interested in me. And my ex-husband, who was just my boyfriend at the time, was on my right, and this guy was on my left, and I was talking to this guy, and this guy leaned in to kiss me right there. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on here? And I immediately turned to my ex, and I was like, did you see what he just did? He's like, what? I was like, he just tried to kiss me. He's like, no, he didn't. He said, no, he didn't. He's trying to gaslight me about something that had just occurred that did occur. And I was like, yes, he did. He's like, and then we got into a little fight because I was like, this dude's trying to kiss me and you're not going to do anything about it. And then that was an item of contention for a lot of years, anytime it would come up. And then his story changed from, no, it didn't happen, to, well, I just figured you could take care of yourself, and if you were going to leave me for another guy, that was a good time to do it at the beginning of our relationship when we weren't too attached. Okay, the beginning of a relationship is usually when guys are most into their women and are most protective and possessive of them, and he was never that way from the very beginning. And so just those sort of things, and I could go on and on and on about different stories of things that should have had me running in the very first part of our relationship. It was just not good from the beginning. And I wonder about the woman he's with now, if she even realizes, who she's with and what she's dealing with, because our relationship was crappy from the beginning. I wonder if she will ever look back and realize that as well. I feel bad for her. I wish she knew who she was with, but she doesn't. Or she doesn't seem to, anyway. And then, 25 years goes by. There's lots of stories there. He left me for another woman that he was cheating on me with at his work. Just left me high and dry. I may have told that story on my channel, I'm not sure. But I went to work one day and he was supposed to pick me up, and he never did. Never picked me up. This is before cell phones. Never called. I couldn't get a hold of him. Finally, I took a cab home, and when I got there, his stuff was all gone. And so he had left me and gone to live with that other girl. There's a whole story there. A very interesting story. But I'll tell that another day. And then, I did the stupid thing. Listen, ladies, anybody who knows, who's ever been left or been cheated on, or if you've ever been with somebody who leaves you for another person, let them stay gone. Do not ever take them back. And I had an old man, after he left me, I had an old man tell me one time, I worked at a gas station, and I was sad and crying, and this old man comes in there, he's like, honey, don't you ever take that man back. Any man that leaves you and turns his back on you, you need to let them stay gone. And of course, at that time, I was just like, in my head, thinking, no, I want him back so bad. I want him back so bad. And then, 3 months later, he comes running back, and I took him back, and huge mistake. I should have let him stay gone. Huge mistake. So, my advice to any of you, whoever are in a relationship and somebody leaves you, Don't take them back. Just don't. There's better out there. There's something like 7 or 8 billion people on this earth. You don't have to settle for somebody who runs off and leaves you. It's just not necessary. So anyway, hello everybody. There's been a few people popping on here. Thank you so much for listening. I could talk about this story. 25 years worth of stories, but that's how I met them. And I don't know how I'm gonna go through the story of my marriage. I don't know how to go about doing that, because there's so many. Maybe I'll do the early years, the mid years, the late years, and when I finally had enough, maybe I'll do that. I don't know. But you can think about, it's a regretful thing that I married a man that I knew I should never have married. I knew that before I married him, that I shouldn't marry him. I did anyway. But you can talk about regrets, but then I also think I've got 3 children and 2 grandchildren, and I wouldn't trade any of them for the world. I would go through hell and back for those guys. So, something good came of it. A lot of good things came of it. My babies came of it. So, you could always say, oh, you would have had other kids or whatever, but I didn't. I had my kids. So everything happens for a reason. I don't want to be cliche about it, but God directs your paths, and He puts you on the path to, whatever it is that He's got you going to. And you just have to trust that it's the right path and trust that He's with you on it. So I'm through that period of my life. I've been divorced for almost 3 years now. Part of me has been sad that I've not been able to find somebody else to be with. But as time goes on, I'm actually getting to the point where I'm like, kind of doing all right on my own. I don't have to argue with anybody. I could do things however I want to. I could go where I want to. I don't have to worry about somebody, disagreeing with everything that I do. Now, granted, could you be with somebody who's wonderful and makes your life amazing? Yeah, but I find that that's the exception rather than the norm. I feel like today most relationships kind of suck. I know there are good ones out there, but there's not a lot of good ones out there. I think most of them kind of suck. So I'm kind of okay. I'm getting to the point to where I'm really accepting just living single. I got my kids, got my grandkids. I'm getting ready to move to Tennessee, which I don't know if I've announced that on this channel or not. I'm going to be moving to Tennessee in a month or probably about 2 months. I'm going to be with my kids, my older son and my grandkids. And I'm excited. It'll be nice. So, there's worse things than being single. There are worse things than being single, like being in a relationship with a narcissist. It's a pretty crappy place to be. So anyway, I think that it's gonna wrap it up for now. I hope y'all are having a great day. If you've been in a crappy relationship, tell me about it. I want to hear about it. If you escaped a crappy relationship, I really want to hear about that. If you are in a crappy relationship, let's talk about that, because you can get out. It's hard. It took me a long time to get the guts up to do it, but it can be done. I was a single mom. I was a stay-at-home mom. I didn't have a job. I hadn't worked in like 9 years, and I kept the house. And not only did I leave him, but I kept the house. And I was doing okay with paying for the house, but prices did start going up. My insurance went up and doubled. My insurance doubled in 1 year. The taxes doubled in 1 year. And I was just getting to the point to where it was becoming a real burden, plus my health, the cancer thing. I could have stayed and I could have kept paying for the house, but I didn't. I left. And the house is now under contract, and it will be sold in just a couple of weeks, and that burden will be past me. So, anywho, I'm going to jump off of here, and I hope y'all are doing well, and I hope to hear from you soon. Do all the YouTube-y things, like, subscribe, if what my story if my story interests you, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And I'd like to hear from you. Leave a comment below and let me know how you are, who you are, where you are. I'd like to hear from you. Take care. God bless. And I'm going to wait till the road gets straight again before I sign off.